Greetings all, welcome to AnalyView. Today we are looking at Character Building, which is the debut album by Melbourne quartet Bad Bangs. Though being released in late 2021, this album is an anachronism in that it has these elements of yesteryear, this psychedelia, folk, pop, rock, blues sort of sound, while it maintains this contemporary, fresh vibe, which makes it really fit well into the current Australian music scene. The term character building is self-explanatory, but the title used here is a double entendre. Lead singer Shelby is a typographer and graphic designer and is to thank for building the characters in the album art. More than being a kind of guide on how to navigate your way, this album is rich in social commentary and is very relatable for a large chunk of the general public. And today we're going to be looking at what makes this album. The first track literally kicks off the album with a bang. There is a single snare and tom shot, which then leads into this semi-distorted, lo-fi guitar riff with these echoing vocals, all very reminiscent of the late 60s sound. And in just 4 minutes, this track manages to capture and create a sort of banner of what is to be expected from the remainder of the album. The lyrics portray a kind of conformist complex. It's about finding yourself. Who are you? Where do you belong? Finding your own sense of style and being comfortable with it. I think this is a little ironic though, because the song contains these elements which are not at all typical and are quite esoteric. I mean, just beginning with this single snare and tom shot, some people could interpret that as a false start. Obviously it isn't, it was intentional, but it's very rare to find this kind of thing in mainstream music. It's like the song begins and ends all in just 2 seconds. And then you have these echoing vocals which come in and out of focus and sort of make the voice an instrument on its own rather than being just something added to heighten and complete the experience. It's like this song is telling us to find the sound and then we're off into the next track. Next up we have Sweet Thing, the debut single from the album and the most popular for good reason. It has easy to sing lyrics, this walking bass line which takes you in and out of the motions of mellow verses to thrashing instrumental passages, and the whole essence of the song is just very swinging. It's easy to dance to. There's this reverb on the guitar which turns a single strum into a whole bar. The lyrics are highly relatable, and I don't think it would be a stretch to say that the age group which would be listening to this kind of music would have experienced this thing at least once in their life. Also, the promotional video, which appears to be filmed on a Super 8, doesn't exactly do harm to this song's ability to break into the mainstream. This last decade has seen a huge return to the hippie aesthetic, so this grainy footage, bursting with popping reds and greens, is further testament to the group's appreciation for this style of music. And hey, props to whoever lugged that drum kit on location, man, that would have killed. If you took that alone, my back hurts just thinking about it. As well as being the most played song on the album, it also spotlights band member Tim as a more than capable drummer. You have sprinkled throughout these drum fills which not only add colour and taste to the song, but allow it to keep its nice steady pace, which in order to do, you have to find this kind of equilibrium of this state of not too little, not too much. Also, bassist Ben does a solo on this song, which would make it interesting to execute live. Perhaps one of the other guitarists does a solo live. Starting off with nothing more than a bass and hi-hat for almost 20 seconds, Different lives up to its name. It runs this minimalistic B-G-A chord progression before downstrumming its way into a more punk scene, meanwhile pertaining to a technical standpoint with the use of this subtle synth in the background. It's an effective build-up to a slight rise during the chorus, which is then masterfully grounded with this tom-tom fill, which kind of emulates rolling. The lyrics lend this idea of coming to terms with change in a throwaway society, or in a throwaway world actually, which is full of technology which kind of leads astray with unsettling ease. There's a glimpse of empowerment and personal growth, and then in my opinion comes one of the most pensive moments of the album, with the refrain again. There's a tambourine adding this attentive element, and the synth is more prominent with a whirlwind of sound. Then it all comes together. There's layered vocals, drums, multiple guitars, bass, percussion, synth, and even piano in there too. It's a myriad of sound maintaining this steady rhythm as the bridge flows along, intensifies, and then eventually acts as an outro. The lasting sound is this jingling tambourine, softly swaying earthbound on the feathers of the synth, leaving you wondering what it was all about. The moment requires a ponder before proceeding. To leave it short and sweet, there is a single word which could sum up this song: liberation. There is a feeling of cynicism, but this could just be misconstrued anxiety and heartache. I think this is a love song, but not limited to that of existing between two people. I think this is a song of hope, and it speaks to you in terms of self-discovery. It goes through all of these emotions of anger, confusion, confidence, guilt, vengeance, and eventually contentment. The greatness within this is that it isn't lyrically strictly confined to one narrative, which allows the listener to easily interpret it to suit their own worldview and subsequently overcome challenges and works in progress, past, future, and present. I personally think this song contains the best lyrics of them all. Maybe I missed the right hand to hold, not what I want, but what I needed to know. It's a harsh pill to swallow, but one that's necessary for a higher sense of purpose. The protagonist is experiencing a realization. They're at a crossroads and are now free to choose what may be their path. The use of synths here adds a kind of mysticism, which plays into the lyrical content, and as well as successfully bringing the track to a natural climax, it then comes to this pseudo-psychedelic electro-pop outro a la Hendrix or the Monkees during their Moog era. One interesting thing to mention about the song is the strange time signatures used during the instrumental section between the second and third stanzas. It's just offbeat enough to be recognizable, but tight enough to appreciate the musicianship required to probably execute something like this. The use of synths at the end of the song draws on the mysticism before entering into All in All, which is back to a pure garage rock sound. The second single, this is one of the more upbeat garage punk rock songs with this relentless and driving rhythm. There's an instrumental break between verses which has this militaristic snare under this lead guitar riff, whose tone has a nice mix of twang and crunch, making it sound like it's taken straight from a CCR album. There's also some nice imagery throughout the use of metaphors here. This may be the only song on the album which has a direct tip of the hat to another musical group, the Beatles. I Want to Hold Your Hand, Don't Want It to Depend is a brutal truth. And it's a stark contrast from the naive, affectionate Beatles lyric to Bad Day saying, don't become dependent on me. Now, more metaphors are offered in Spell, which is one of the only tracks with acoustic guitar and is definitely the most folk. You have this plinky, saloon-sounding piano which layers the song with a coat of warm togetherness. With only 2 verses and less than 50 words in total, it somehow has the ability to tell a whole story, which many songs with several verses have difficulty in doing. It vacuums you out of your reality and drops you into the shoes of the narrator. You feel what they feel, see what they see, and do what they do. You can picture this frozen space and time that a sentimental photo can bring, with all its memories and mind-altering emotions. Just like being under a spell, you're helpless to the feeling, paralyzed in a trance, whether it be your will or not. The wordplay in the line "spell it out" feels like an attempted exorcism, whatever it is. It's like they're aiming to make haste and free themselves of it, as they're aware of their futile aging and fading chances or something like this. It's a friendly reminder, a lesson, that youth is not only a depiction of one's age, but more importantly, it's a mental state. You're only as young as you feel. As cliche as that may sound, it's very true. And they're sort of telling you that it shouldn't be entirely dismissed because there's wisdom in there. The song then gradually loses steam and comes to a close with this suave guitar melody, and it finds a peaceful conclusion. The third single from the album, and another with an accompanying video, "Can't Dance," seems to be a metaphor for the inability or the perceived lack of ability to communicate. As we've seen themed in previous songs, there's an overarching expression of this feeling of being out of place. There's a momentary and unexpected break after the first verse, where it almost reaches a point of complete silence, making you wonder where you're heading. This refrain begins with a vibra slap, which is a seldom used instrument. You really don't hear it much. And it's effective in changing the mood of the song. It's a short, sharp jolt into another realm. If you listen closely, there's also a subtle beat of a wooden percussion instrument akin to the claves or the castanets or the tone block. In line with the theme and the title of the song, these are often played to back dancing in Indigenous ceremonies, not only in Australia but around the rest of the world too. We then jump into the guitar solo, which at first may sound like nonsensical mayhem, just like mindless shredding, but then thoughtfully steps back into this well-executed note-for-note melodic section, coming full circle to find the song's home and create this nice close with the lingering fade out of wind chimes. The video alludes to the mystery by showing us a girl on her own, not another soul in sight, in a desolate, eerily almost post-apocalyptic setting. Cut to the chorus and she's surrounded by three people. She gazes around at them, but they are rock steady without expression. They may be people, but they might as well be unreceptive ghosts, dead robots, blank walls whereby there doesn't appear to be any paint to bring them back to life. It's like, despite the fact they are all near each other, they are very much disconnected. The last and the longest song on the album, it sounds like a suite in how it's broken into three complete sections. It starts out with this very punk, just nothing but downstrumming acoustic. The vocals here are a tinge darker too. They seem to be demanding an answer. It's as if all the emotions of the rollercoaster ride of 9 songs have come to a head, and now there is a no bullshit explanation required. Next, there's an electric section which slowly progresses and finds itself in a frenzy of competent noise. Here there's some heavy fuzz and wah-wah going on, which combined creates this, what I think is arguably the most self-expressive solo of the entire album. It blends so many sounds together that it paints a strong visual. You can imagine this guitarist just giving it their all, sitting on the floor, just hunched over their guitar like they're possessed by it, like hypnotized by it, and putting their heart and soul into the moment, just lost in a trance. And the more that they give, feeding on this electric stringed beast, the more momentum that is built upon the hypnosis, and the deeper they delve into this alternate reality that the great collective consciousness expresses. It's like they're taking all they've ever experienced and harnessing it for this very musical passage to convey a ubiquitous idea, this feeling of liberation, and a curious optimism for what awaits. You really want to see what's coming. The bridge to avoid a crash and the come down is the chorus. Are you here? It creates a smooth transition from high-powered ad-libbed madness into the polar opposite space. It's the fade out. But as smooth and tame as it may seem, there are these indistinguishable voices mixed in, which it kind of retains this attentive intrigue and a lack of normalcy. Now, after a moment's silence, there's a tape of a single electric guitar being played backwards, and layered on it is a whispered mantra of "here," while in the background we can still hear all this unintelligible chatter of distant voices. It creates a kind of soundscape to continue a very real and visual dynamic. The lyrics yet again touch on this feeling of being a misfit and having a conscious disconnection with others and struggling to come to terms with this. So all that being said, I think character building could very well fit into several different epochs of music, ranging from the counterculture period of the 60s and 70s to the punk beginnings of the mid to late 70s and the pop folk rock sounds of the late 90s and early 2000s. It can be heard through what I imagine some of their musical influences are: Murlocs, King Gizzard, Emil and the Sniffers, Lou Reed, Stooges, T-Rex, Growlers, Runaways, Patti Smith, Jefferson Airplane, just to name a few. There are three main tones which seem to be present across the entire album: sound, screen, and meaning. The lyrics speak of learning, personal change, understanding, not understanding, overcoming, and going through the motions which most of us can relate to, all the while never ceasing to question oneself. I would assume that all the band members were born in the, late 80s or early 90s, I'm just guessing. Well, this was a unique time to be born because it comes with these pros and cons. On one hand, you're brought up with the internet, so you're in touch with the current situation we're in with society in the first world at least. But then on the other hand, you have also enjoyed the other side of the world where the whole counterculture of the past and a lot of what the influences for this album come from were just like next door. It's pretty cool. It kind of puts you in this limbo where you can't exactly relate to the generation before, and you have even more trouble relating to the one after you, the one that's current. It's crazy. I can relate. But as much as you can get on board with the way that the world is today, with pop culture being very much led by the youth, it can be hard to get a grasp on it all when it just doesn't speak your language. Disconnect. Communication breakdown. Overall, I think this is a brilliant debut album, and I'm very much anticipating whatever they release next, because this was really cool. As Robert Plant once said, the whole idea of music from the beginning of time was for people to be happy. So if I don't enjoy the music, that's my loss, man. And if someone else does, more power to them.